The Buddha once taught that all conditioned phenomena are impermanent, like dew on the grass, like the last rays of the setting sun, like clouds drifting across mountaintops. Nothing can be held onto forever. This body, too, is merely a temporary aggregation of the four great elements: earth, water, wind, and fire. One day, it will disintegrate, returning to dust. Everyone born will grow old. Everyone present will eventually depart. Impermanence is not a warning, but an evident truth present in every breath, every encounter, every moment we live. We often think that some things will stay forever, that loved ones will always be by our side, that our health tomorrow will be the same as today, that today's love will never change. But time will show us a truth. Nothing truly belongs to us. Both love and hurt, both blessings and challenges, are merely borrowed connections. When the conditions are right, they come. When the conditions cease, they go. Yet, how many people are willing to look at this truth? We are so afraid of the word impermanence because once we see it, we realize we cannot hold on to anything. But it is precisely because we avoid impermanence that our hearts suffer whenever adversity strikes. Losing a loved one, we blame heaven and earth. Failing, we torment ourselves. Being betrayed, we suffer endlessly. We don't suffer because of what happened, but because we believe it shouldn't have happened. But if, at some point, we view life with awakened eyes, seeing everything as merely a guest, then our hearts begin to know how to let go. Letting go is not indifference. Letting go is not coldness. Letting go means knowing when something has come time to depart, so we gently bid it farewell, without clinging, without resentment. This world is inherently a temporary realm, from our physical forms to our circumstances, from loved ones to strangers, from happiness to sorrow, from gathering to parting. All are like fleeting images in a long dream. Someone who smiles and talks with us today may become a memory tomorrow. A place we once considered home may, in the blink of an eye, no longer belong to us. Even we ourselves are, day by day, hour by hour, moving toward old age, sickness, and death. Sometimes we cling too much to something, thinking we can hold it forever in our hands. But with just a breath of impermanence, everything turns into flying clouds. Then we look back and wonder why life is so sad. But we don't realize that this sadness arises from our own history. We want to hold what cannot be held. We want to grasp what cannot be grasped. And so, suffering doesn't come from life itself, but from how we face life. Someone once asked the Buddha, "How can one live without suffering?" The Buddha did not answer immediately. He led the person to walk to a tree. A petal had just fallen in the evening breeze. He asked, "If you knew the flower would bloom and then wither, would you still feel pain when you saw it fall?" Life is precisely like that. Knowing impermanence, the heart begins to accept. Acceptance allows us to live more deeply, to love each other more completely. Acceptance allows us to let go more lightly. Today's video will be a journey inward, a journey to recognize impermanence and learn to heal all afflictions in our own hearts. If you are tired, stuck, and don't know how to move forward, then sit back, breathe deeply, and listen. There is a truth everyone knows, but very few are willing to look directly at it. Human life changes daily. Things that once made us happy can become sources of sadness. People who once said they would be with us forever may leave without a word. Childhood dreams we thought we would achieve may now have to be tucked away in a deep corner of memory. Whether we want it or not, everything changes. That is not a warning. It is the nature of life. That is impermanence. Impermanence is like dew under the morning sun, sparkling for a moment, then vanishing without a trace. Impermanence is like laughter from some afternoon, then fading into the silence of night. If we close our eyes and ignore that truth, it's no different from living in a self-created dream. But if one day we calmly look directly at it, we will understand that impermanence doesn't come to scare us, but to teach us to live more deeply in every moment. The Buddha affirmed in the scriptures that all conditioned phenomena are impermanent. All things with form will be destroyed. All that is born will surely perish. All that meets will eventually part. People and objects, happiness and suffering, youth and old age, opportunities and challenges, all obey this law. Nothing stands still. Impermanence is the continuous operation of the universe. Day follows night. Seasons change leaves. People grow up and grow old. Houses are built, and then, at some point, must be repaired or abandoned. Yet, humans often want to cling to things that are drifting away every minute. We forget that life does not promise to wait for anyone. In fact, within each person, there is a part of the heart that wishes for stability, longevity, and unchanging circumstances. This is a natural psychology. Because we fear loss and loneliness, we love someone and hope they will always be as they are now. We have a stable job and believe that life is settled. We are healthy today and think tomorrow will be the same. But when an event occurs, we often cannot accept it. A sudden parting can leave us heartbroken for years. A professional failure can make us lose confidence and direction. An unexpected illness can turn our world upside down. At that time, many people think life is too cruel. But in reality, life does nothing wrong. We only suffer because we forget the impermanent nature of all things. Someone once told a story about a young woman who went to study abroad. When she first arrived, she was full of excitement. Everything was new. But gradually, she felt lonely because she had no family by her side. She thought that if she returned home, everything would be easier. But when she returned to Vietnam, she realized many friends had changed paths. Her family was also not as it had been. Her mother had aged, and the old house was no longer as lively as when she left. She suffered because everything had changed too quickly. She felt she no longer had a fallback place to return to. But then, one day, meeting a monk at a pagoda, she heard that this very change was life's reminder. No one and no place will stand still for us to return to. Only inner peace is where we can truly go. As she began to meditate, she realized impermanence was present right in her breath. Breathing in, then breathing out. Each passing moment cannot be held onto. That's when she understood that if she knew impermanence, she would no longer blame life, but would cherish every moment she had. We often mistakenly think that impermanence is something to be feared, but in reality, impermanence carries a gift. If there were no impermanence, would flowers bloom? If there were no impermanence, would dawn appear? If there were no impermanence, could we become better people than we were yesterday? Impermanence breaks down the old to make way for the new. Impermanence takes away what no longer serves us so we can learn to grow. Impermanence helps us recognize what is precious. When someone leaves, we know we once loved them. When illness comes, we know health is a gift. When failure visits, we begin to ask ourselves what the true path is for us. Impermanence sometimes comes with tears, but if we look deeply, we will see it comes to teach us how to live. A Zen master once said, "Humans are like travelers carrying an overly heavy backpack, filled with expectations, the past, old wounds, unfulfilled promises, and fears of the future. We carry it all, and then complain that we are tired, but we don't realize that we can completely put that backpack down. Life is just a journey, not a stage to prove ourselves better than others. If we know impermanence, we will no longer compare ourselves to anyone, because everyone will change. If we know impermanence, we will not cling to praise or criticism, because all will pass. If we know impermanence, we will live kinder lives every day. Because who knows, tomorrow we may no longer have the opportunity to say a loving word. The Buddha taught that impermanence is the key to opening the door to enlightenment. When we clearly see impermanence, we no longer harbor the illusion that we can control life. We begin to see things as they are, not as we wish them to be. We accept the truth that everything changes, and that acceptance is the first step to inner freedom. Many people suffer because they do not accept the present. They want the past to return or hope the future unfolds as they imagine. But if we know impermanence, we will understand that the most precious thing is not the past or the future, but the present moment that is unfolding. In this moment, we are still breathing, still capable of loving, still capable of forgiving. And life is still beautiful. Some Western philosophers like Heraclitus once said that no one ever steps in the same river twice. The water has flowed on, and the person is no longer the person they were before. This idea is actually very close to the Buddhist concept of impermanence. Heisenberg in quantum physics also said that all things fluctuate. Nothing is absolutely still. Scientists see impermanence in every cell, every molecule, and the Buddha saw impermanence in every thought. Someone asked, "Is impermanence real?" Look at your face in the mirror over the past 10 years. Look at your parents. Look at the places you have traveled. Everything is changing every minute. Impermanence is not a theory. Impermanence is breath. When we understand impermanence, we will be less angry with others, because we know that everyone changes. Sometimes they are no longer who they were. When we understand impermanence, we will cherish those who are by our side, because we know that one day they will depart. When we understand impermanence, we will not be angry with ourselves if we have made mistakes, because we know that we are also changing, on a journey of correction and learning. Impermanence makes us more tolerant, more forgiving, more mindful. We no longer want to compete, to show off. We just want to live an authentic life with ourselves. There was a man who had a happy family, but a severe illness caused his health to collapse. For months in the hospital, he was afraid and desperate. He thought fate was unfair. But in that precarious moment, he began to meditate and recite a short sutra about impermanence every day. One early morning, looking at the sunrise from his hospital window, he suddenly felt truly lighthearted. For the first time, he said thank you to this life. He knew that whether he was well or not, whether he lived many more years or only a short time, that moment was still beautiful. He said that impermanence taught him to love every last breath, and gradually his illness improved. He returned to his daily life, but his mind was different, no longer wishing for life to go his way, but simply living fully in every moment. He knew that peace was not when everything went smoothly, but when his heart no longer resisted anything that came and went. Life is not all rosy, but it is beautiful because of its imperfections. A person who waits for perfect conditions to live may wait their whole life. A person who only wants to hold on to what they have will always fear losing it. A person who wishes to avoid all suffering to find peace will never find it. But if we know impermanence, we will begin to learn to live more lightly. When happy, we know to cherish it. When sad, we know to learn the lesson. When someone loves us, we know to be grateful. When someone hurts us, we know that it is also a karmic connection that helps us grow. When things go smoothly, we know to sow blessings. When we encounter adversity, we know it is time to cultivate our minds. All are opportunities. To see impermanence is to see the truth of life clearly. To see impermanence is to begin to let go of heavy burdens. Letting go is not abandoning oneself, but returning to the truth. Letting go is not carrying pain through the years anymore. Letting go is not clinging to what has run its course. Letting go is knowing how to smile when a door closes, believing that another door will open. Letting go is knowing how to slow down to listen to oneself. Letting go is knowing how to live for today, knowing that tomorrow is not guaranteed. Recognizing impermanence is like lighting a lamp in the dark. We still walk the same path, but are no longer afraid. We clearly see our every step. We feel our breath. We know we are living authentically, not in dreamy illusions, not dependent on anything external. Only then are we truly free. The Buddha showed us that path more than 2,500 years ago, that happiness does not lie in how much we own, but in understanding that everything is temporary. When we know something is temporary, we will cherish it more, but not cling to it. We will love, but not be dependent. We will commit, but not fear failure. We will decisively move on when it is time to go. And we will live a life as light as a cloud drifting in the vast sky. When you realize that nothing truly belongs to you, that is when you begin to see the true value of life. You no longer seek happiness outside yourself. You begin to nourish your inner self. You learn to speak kind words, do helpful deeds, know how to forgive, and know how to love. That is how you create merit. That is how you enter inner freedom. Impermanence is the first key that opens that door. If one day you truly see impermanence, you will instinctively know how to let go without anyone having to teach you, because your mind will have understood that everything present in life is there to help you awaken. Impermanence is the teacher, and you are the student on the path of spiritual growth. And if tonight you hear these words in a silent room, perhaps you will feel something stirring within your heart. It might be relief, it might be a touch of melancholy, but it might also be a very strange sense of peace. Just let it appear, for that is the gift of impermanence sent to you. There's a very strange paradox in this life that almost everyone experiences, but few recognize. That is, we always want happiness, always try to avoid suffering. But in the end, we ourselves bring suffering into our hearts. Some suffer because relationships are not as desired. Some suffer from work pressure. Others suffer from financial hardship, family discord, deteriorating health, or an uncertain future. And so, each person carries some fear in their heart and imagines it to be fate, karma, or something unavoidable. But if we look a little deeper, we will see that the root of suffering does not lie in circumstances, nor in others or destiny, but precisely within our own minds. Every day, we live, we breathe, we eat, we engage in daily activities, but we are living with a mind full of tension, full of desires, and full of clinging. Someone asked, "Why is it that the more I try to live well, the more challenges life presents?" The answer is not that there are more challenges, but that the more we try to keep something for ourselves, the more we fear when we see signs of it leaving. This life was not created to satisfy all human desires. It operates according to karma, dependent origination, and the law of impermanence. Yet, humans constantly try to resist this law. We want to preserve our youth, but time quietly slips away. We want to keep our loved ones by our side, but birth, old age, sickness, and death spare no one. We want love to always be full, but human hearts constantly change with the flow of time. It is precisely because we cannot accept reality, cannot see the impermanence of things, that our minds continue to suffer. It's strange that in times of suffering, we often think we are victims of life, that circumstances have treated us unfairly, that fate has not smiled upon us. But if we look deeply within, we will see that it is not circumstances that create suffering, but our clinging to circumstances that is the root, causing us pain. The Buddha once taught that humans suffer not because events occur, but because we do not accept impermanence. When we love someone and they leave, we believe they betrayed us. We torment ourselves, wondering why everything suddenly changed. In reality, that is not betrayal, but rather the conditions have ended. That encounter was only meant to last for a certain period, and then it had to dissolve. When we fail at work, we blame life as unfair, complaining that we tried very hard but received no reward. In fact, those experiences are also unfolding according to the karmic conditions we created previously. Every action, thought, and word contributes to the karmic results of the future. It comes not to punish, but to remind us that it is time to learn the next lesson. If we can see this, then failure is no longer a burden, but becomes a doorway to growth. In modern psychology, this clinging is called resistance to reality. The more we resist, the more we suffer. We always expect everything to happen our way, that others should treat us as we wish, that our career should develop according to plan. But life is like water flowing in a river. It does not flow according to one person's will. It has its own current, and we can only flow with it. We cannot make it stop. Some liken the human mind to a rubber band. The more it is stretched, the more likely it is to break. The more one wishes to hold on, the more the mind is torn by impermanence. Some cling to faded love, some hold on to old, painful memories. Some cling to a career that is no longer suitable for them. When we do not accept the truth that everything has changed, we are like a person standing in a swift current, trying to grasp a rotten branch. The power of the current is too strong. We can only let go to survive. There is a story about a young woman who went to study abroad in America. At the airport, she cried a lot, afraid of loneliness, afraid of being away from her family. She thought that moving to a foreign country would make her life too difficult. But when she arrived, she began to face countless challenges, such as finding accommodation alone, managing her finances alone, and overcoming the cold winter alone. There were times she wanted to give up and return home. But then one day, she realized that these challenges were not meant to make her suffer, but to help her become stronger. She began to live more lightly instead of resisting, and accepted everything as it was. Then she said that since realizing that all emotions are temporary, she began to fear less, worry less, cling less. That chime of acceptance made her life much easier to breathe. The Buddha once taught that all things arise from conditions, meaning nothing arises or ceases naturally. All are a combination of many elements. When these elements are sufficient, an event appears. When these elements dissipate, the event will also vanish. Nothing belongs to us forever, and nothing leaves us forever. Even suffering is just a guest visiting our minds, who will depart when the conditions are met. If we can see this, we will no longer be afraid of changes. There's a saying in the Sutra of 8 Great Realizations. The world is impermanent. The country is fragile. The 4 elements are suffering and empty. The 5 aggregates are not self. This saying reminds us that what we hold on to is merely a temporary aggregation. All conditioned phenomena are impermanent. They are born and die. They gather and disperse. When one sees this, the heart naturally opens up. The Buddhist sutras often mention the 4 noble truths, in which the Buddha taught that suffering is the first truth of life. But suffering is not meant to make people despair. It is to point out the path to liberation from suffering. It is the recognition of suffering that we begin our journey to seek peace. The root of suffering is attachment. Humans always think they can hold on to everything, so the more they hold on, the more they suffer. Like a person embracing a bundle of firewood that is too large, the more they embrace it, the more their arms ache, but they dare not let go for fear of losing everything. In reality, letting go is not losing. Letting go is returning everything to its true, impermanent nature. Letting go is also returning ourselves to freedom. The Buddha taught that all suffering is connected to a type of illusion, the illusion of a separate self. We think everything belongs to us, that we can control everything, that we are the center of the universe. But the doctrine of non-self teaches that the self we believe in is merely a combination of body and mind. The body changes day by day, hour by hour. The mind is like a constantly flowing river. If we cling to that self, we will always be afraid whenever something changes. But when we see that both body and mind are impermanent, we will begin to learn to live more lightly. We know that no one truly betrays us. Nothing truly works against us. Everything is merely karmic conditions coming and going. The only way out is not to escape suffering, but to look directly at it. Not to fight impermanence, but to recognize it. When impermanence is clearly seen, the mind will naturally lighten. Someone once asked how to stop suffering. I replied, "Look deeply into the nature of all things." When we know that life is merely a flow of karmic conditions, we will no longer fear when everything changes. We even begin to cherish every moment. We know that loved ones by our side will not always be there, so we love them more. We know that our health will not remain as it is today, so we take better care of ourselves. We know that some things will leave, so we live with gratitude instead of clinging. Letting go is not giving up on life, but living more mindfully. Contemplating impermanence is how we learn to cherish every present moment. What is important is not how long our life will last, but how deeply we have lived in each moment of that life. When we calmly accept impermanence, our minds will be less tense, less angry, less resentful. We will no longer want to compete with others. We will no longer compare ourselves to life. We just live with ourselves, peacefully and deeply. It is regrettable that in today's busy life, very few people take the time to reflect on their minds. We constantly chase after external things and forget that peace only comes when the mind is calm enough to see how everything operates. Like a rower, if one only looks at the waves and not the direction, one will always be lost. Similarly, if we only look at difficulties and not the law of impermanence, we will always suffer. But once we understand that everything has its karmic causes and conditions, and its own timing, we will live with acceptance, summoning peace from deep within. When a person understands impermanence, they will no longer blame those who hurt them, because they know that each person is acting based on their own karma. They also do not see failure as an end, because they know that every ending is just a new beginning. They are not afraid of loneliness, because they know loneliness is also just a temporary emotion. They do not chase fame, because fame is just a fleeting shadow on the water. They begin to live more simply, more appreciatively, more lovingly, and especially more gratefully. The most important lesson is to learn to accept. Acceptance is not resignation, but no longer resisting. When we relax our hands, letting go of all burdens in our minds, then we truly embark on a journey of healing. From there, the path forward will be much lighter. When we clearly see impermanence, we will see that what we have is a blessing, not a given. We will change the way we live, the way we love, and the way we face every event that comes into our lives. As you listen, try to ask yourself one question. Is there anything you are trying to hold on to grasp tightly in your heart, and are unwilling to let go of, even though it has hurt you deeply? If so, acknowledge it. You don't have to let go immediately, but start looking at it with awakened eyes. Remember that you are not alone, because everyone is struggling with their own suffering. But just knowing that suffering has a cause, and that cause can be transformed, peace has already begun to flicker within you. When impermanence is seen, the mind will naturally know how to let go. There are moments in life that awaken people without needing argument, debate, or too many teachings. Just that 1 second, the heart softens, the mind suddenly quiets, and one understands that all resistance to fate is futile. Because if life is impermanent, then all gains and losses are merely waves rising on a vast ocean. The wise person is one who observes the waves, not one who rushes to hold on to every wave, embrace every gust of wind, claiming it as their own possession. Life only suffers when we try to hold on to something that was not meant to be held. Some people lose sleep over just a single keepsake, yet others lose their entire family and continue to walk on with a heart that understands impermanence. The difference lies in perception, in daring to look directly at the truth that in this life, no one can keep anyone, and no one can keep anything forever. The Buddha once taught that when a person suffers from loss, it is not because they lost, but because they never accepted that what they held never truly belonged to them. That non-acceptance is the deep root of affliction. Some people come to the pagoda with distraught faces. Some are depressed after a breakup. Some give up on life because their family fell apart. But in the silence of the temple bell, or in a calm word from a Zen master, many find the peace they had lost for so long. Just by recognizing impermanence, their minds suddenly become like a still surface of water, no longer stirred by fear and suffering. People do not suffer from a lack of happiness, but from wanting to cling to happiness that has run its course. The human mind inherently fears emptiness, so it always seeks to fill itself with temporary things. But no matter how one tries, the void cannot be completely filled. Because the more one fills, the more anxiety overflows. The fullness on the outside is the emptiness within. We chase money, so our minds don't think about loneliness. We seek love, so we don't feel lacking. We seek fame to escape the feeling of being small. But then, when faced with loss, the mind panics because there's no longer anything to cling to. If one realizes that all things are impermanent, the mind becomes free. And when the mind is free, people will know how to live more fully with what they have. Now, let us pause and delve into everyday stories that offer profound lessons about impermanence. Each story not only moves the listener, but also helps us see that impermanence has never killed anyone. It only makes us more mature, gentler, and more mindful of living for each other. The first story is called The Temple Bell in the Rain. Ngok Lan, 28, once had a warm family. She lived with her mother, who was the greatest spiritual support in her life. But life doesn't ask our permission before changing direction. Lan's mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and after only a few months of struggle, she passed away. Lan almost collapsed. Though an adult, she felt like a child who had lost her home. She closed herself off, rarely met friends, and avoided all conversations. Many nights, Lan would hug her mother's old clothes, smelling the familiar scent on them, and cry until she choked. She couldn't believe that someone who had lived by her side could disappear so quickly. Lan suffered from depression in silence, like a tree that had lost its deepest roots. One rainy afternoon, Lan sought temporary shelter under the gate of a small pagoda. The rain lasted for a long time, not fierce, but gentle, like the tears in her heart for so long. At that moment, the sky was misty, the ground was covered with water, and the cries in Lan's heart threatened to overflow. Then suddenly, the temple bell rang, not too loud, but enough to affect the human heart. The sound of the bell seemed to penetrate through the layers of clouds, through the rain, and touched Lan's withered heart. She stood stunned for a long time, then tears streamed down her face. She clearly felt one thing. Her mother was no longer by her side. But she also felt another thing. Her mother's passing was not an end. It was just a moment in the great journey of life, just turning a new page. Lan entered the pagoda, sat in the silent main hall, bowed her head, and cried. But strangely, this time she didn't cry out of resistance or trying to hold on to her lost mother. She cried because she felt light, like a bird that had flown too far, now resting on a branch amidst the afternoon rain. In that moment, Lan understood that if everything was impermanent, her mother had never truly left her. A blooming flower that withers does not disappear. It merely returns its colors and fragrance to heaven and earth. So too with her mother. It was simply that the conditions had ended, just a temporary departure according to the law of dependent origination. Lan clasped her hands and softly whispered, "Mother, I will not hold you anymore. I will live as you once lived." From that moment, Lan began to regain her peace of mind. She no longer feared loss, because she understood that resisting impermanence was pushing herself into a dead end. Recognizing impermanence, she accepted life as it was and began to recover gradually. The Diamond Sutra states, "All conditioned phenomena are like a dream, a bubble, a lightning flash in the sky. If one clearly sees this, the heart will be at peace." Lan realized this, and from that understanding, her life embarked on a new path. Loss was no longer an enemy, but a mirror reflecting her own heart. She learned to see impermanence with a calm heart. And then Lan began to live for the small things she had once overlooked when her mother was alive. A flower blooming by the roadside, a warm cup of tea in the morning, a heartfelt conversation with an old friend. These could all become moments of healing. Lan said, "Impermanence did not make me weak. It taught me to be strong without resistance." The second story is an encounter with a Zen master and a full bowl of water. Tran Van Min, 45, was a successful man. He owned his company, had a house, and was respected by many. But life would not forget anyone when it was time to knock on their door. In a sudden traffic accident, he lost his son. The shock completely shattered him. He had once believed he could control his life with his own brilliance, but now all his beliefs shattered like glass falling to the ground. He blamed fate, even blaming Buddha and heaven for taking away what was most precious to him. In despair, Min sought out Zen master Thich Tam Din. He knelt before the Zen master and asked, "Why was everything taken from me? What did I do wrong to suffer like this?" The master did not answer immediately. He picked up a full bowl of water, held it up, and said, "Try to hold this bowl of water, but don't let it spill." Min tried to hold the bowl, but the more he held, the more he trembled, and water spilled over the rim. The master said, "When the bowl is full, if you try to hold it, it will overflow. The more you want to keep your son as he was, the more you will suffer. Because everything in life has a time to come and a time to go." Min was silent, tears falling onto the cold floor. He understood his illusory attachment, which only wanted to hold on to what could not be held. Impermanence did not take away his son. It only reminded him that in this life, nothing truly belongs to us alone. And if we know how to accept, we will know how to live the rest of our journey with a more expansive heart. Min took many months to come to terms with that truth, but then he became calmer. He told a friend that letting go is not forgetting, but understanding that pain also has its purpose. Sometimes pain itself teaches us compassion. The Zen master once told him, "You lost your son, but you still have yourself. You must first learn to love yourself before you can learn to love life without fearing loss anymore." From that moment, Min used his mind to help others who suffered as he once had. He organized psychological sharing sessions, helping those who had lost loved ones. Every time he stood before people, he said one thing: "Impermanence took my son, but it gave me back a heart of understanding. If we can accept it, even loss can become a path to compassion." The third story is a journey from pain to compassion. The main character is Mrs. Le Thi Han, 50 years old, who lost both her husband and son in an accident. She was depressed and almost completely silent for a long time, not talking to anyone. Every morning, she woke up feeling that life had no meaning anymore. She retreated within 4 cold walls, living like a fading shadow in her own house. There were days she wouldn't eat or sleep, just staring at a family photo, then collapsing. She didn't blame life. She just couldn't understand why everything happened so quickly. One time, going to the market, she met a beggar. The person's eyes were like her son's eyes when he was alive. That moment made her freeze. Her heart trembled. For the first time in many months, she felt a heartbeat different from pain. It was compassion. She decided to cook charitable meals every day. At first, just a few portions, then 10, then hundreds. She took in a few orphaned children and helped homeless people find shelter. In the following years, she became a person with a generous heart, without needing any title. Everyone who met her felt peaceful. Someone asked her how she managed to get back on her feet after such a big shock. She simply replied, "I didn't get up because I am strong. I got up because I understand impermanence. It didn't come to destroy me. It came to open another door for my soul. When the door of the heart opens, suffering is no longer a burden. It becomes the energy of compassion." These 3 stories are like 3 doors leading into a silent garden. In that garden, people learn to see impermanence with calm eyes. The Buddha once taught that when impermanence is seen, the mind will no longer cling. When one understands the nature of life as coming together and then falling apart, one will no longer resist the laws of creation. And when there is no resistance, afflictions naturally vanish like bubbles in the sky. Impermanence does not kill anyone. It only makes people more mature, gentler, and deeper. Sometimes, loss helps us appreciate small things. Sometimes, suffering teaches us true love, and not to waste time on resentment. When we understand impermanence, we know how to live in the present instead of fearing the future or regretting the past. We learn to hear the temple bell in the rain without feeling a storm in our hearts. We learn to keep the bowl of water just full enough, knowing that if it's too full, it will overflow. And we understand that if we lose someone or something, it is perhaps because its journey has come to an end. We no longer cling, because we know that if we live with love, nothing is truly lost. Everything that has touched our hearts will remain there, silent and warm. If one day you feel your heart is too heavy, pause for a moment. Breathe slowly. Look around and remember that life is not always full of storms. There are still bird songs in the early morning, still gentle afternoon rains passing over the rooftops, still kind-hearted people walking in crowded streets. Life is impermanent, but within that impermanence, we can still sow love, little by little. It is that love that endures longest in this fleeting life. And if we can look at life with calm eyes, know how to slow down to hear every beat within ourselves, then perhaps we will understand that impermanence is not something to be feared. It is merely a gentle reminder that today is the most precious gift we have. When we understand that, we will walk with a light heart and an expansive soul. Not because life is devoid of pain, but because we have learned to walk through pain with the light of awareness. And perhaps that is the moment when one truly begins to live. In the hurried pace of life, people are often swept up in work, deadlines, phone calls, unanswered conversations, unfinished dreams, and unaddressed worries. We think that tomorrow will still come, that next week we can still meet loved ones, that next month we will return home to visit our parents, that next year we will rest a little. We always believe that there is enough time to postpone everything important, and we think that everything will wait for us. Yet, in life, no one knows the last moment. If tomorrow might not come, then today is all we have. That saying sounds simple, but it contains a truth that sometimes takes a lifetime to understand. Impermanence is not a distant philosophy. It is manifest in every breath, every glance, every simple meal. We are living together. The Buddhist channel, Phat Phap Lin Ung, reminds us that in Buddhist teachings, impermanence is the nature of all phenomena. From forms to emotions, from people to careers, everything arises and ceases according to conditions. The Buddha taught that everything changes every instant. No two moments are identical. No instant remains the same. If people are mindful and recognize this, their minds will naturally stop clinging to fragile things, thus avoiding suffering when they change. Impermanence is not a sad warning, but a key to living fully in every moment. It opens a new perspective on the present, helping us see that happiness does not lie in tomorrow, in success, or in distant things, but is right before our eyes. It could be the gentle face of a mother, the rough hands of a father, the laughter of children, or simply the peaceful breath still flowing into our chest. Someone once asked why knowing impermanence makes people live happier lives. The answer lies in the truth that when we realize everything can be lost, we cultivate the ability to appreciate what is present. A meal with family is no longer a daily routine, but a miracle. A hug from a loved one is no longer ordinary, but a gift. A mother's call of "my child," or a wife's "you're home from work, dear," suddenly become sacred sounds. The whole world is not a stage for competition, but a constantly flowing river. And we get to sit by that river, drink a cup of tea, breathe more deeply, and realize we are still alive. Humans suffer largely because they lose the ability to live in the present. They let their minds drift to the past, thinking, if only things had been different. They let their thoughts rush to the future, worrying about what hasn't happened yet. The mind is constantly pulled in all directions, refusing to stay in this moment, making life heavy and full of afflictions. Sometimes people mistakenly think that they need a lot to be happy, that they must be successful to smile, that they must be respected to feel valuable. But the further one goes from oneself, the lonelier one feels. That's when we need to turn back, look within, and ask ourselves, have I ever truly tasted a meal? Really felt its flavors? Have I ever drunk tea, knowing that I was drinking tea? How long has it been since I listened to the birds sing, the rain fall on the eaves, or the quiet beat of my own heart? Meditation is not something profound. It's simply returning to what is present. Mindfulness is not about everyone sitting still for 1 or 2 hours to be called meditation. Mindfulness is just knowing that I am breathing, knowing that I am walking, knowing that the person in front of me is also breathing, also walking, also tired, and also needs understanding from the heart. When the mind returns to the present, we will feel life slow down. Our breath becomes deeper, and it seems all afflictions also lighten. Humans don't need to do anything special to be happy. They just need to know that they are alive. The story of Mr. Than is a profound testament to that. Mr. Nguyen Van Than, 60, spent nearly 30 years toiling in a big city. He thought he had to earn a lot of money to support his family, to repay his parents, and to live a worthy life. He worked diligently, forgetting himself, rushing through breakfast to get to work on time, leaving early, and returning late in the city's bright nights. For the first 15 years, he said he still remembered the smell of home-cooked meals. After 20 years, he only saw his family through a phone screen. By the time 30 years passed, the only thing he brought back home was a tired body, gray hair, and a heavy wallet, but an empty heart. The day he returned home, his mother was old. She was no longer as agile as before. Her eyes were dim, her voice weaker, but she was still overjoyed to see him. That meal was simple, but warm. His mother still sat in the old chair, just like when he was a child. She picked up a piece of braised fish for him, softly asking if his work was hard, if the city was too cold. He looked at his mother for a long time, seeing the calluses on her hands from long ago, seeing a touch of sadness in her eyes, yet still filled with love. He himself never expected that meal would be the last time mother and son would sit together. That evening, while washing dishes, he looked at the chair his mother used to sit in and realized a truth that made his heart drop. The empty chair was only a few steps away, but that distance seemed to stretch across the lifetime. His mother passed away the next morning. She left silently, gently, like someone who had lived a full life and knew that this life was enough. Mr. Than sat in the familiar house, but tears kept falling uncontrollably. He suddenly understood. Life never warns us of the last time. The cost of waiting for a tomorrow is losing today. He wished he could exchange all his money, all his successes, all the hardships of those 30 years, just for one more meal with his mother. But impermanence had arrived, and a simple meal became the most sacred thing in his life. From that story, he began to live differently. He no longer chased after distant things. He tidied up his old house, swept the yard daily, planted a few vegetable beds, and practiced eating slowly. He drank tea with neighbors, watched the sun rise each morning, knowing he was still breathing. Once, someone asked him why he could let go of his old ambitions. He just smiled and said he had once lost the most precious thing because he failed to realize it was present. Before his mother passed away, he always thought happiness lay in the future. But after his mother left, he understood that happiness is only present in the here and now. The Buddha taught that the past is gone, and the future has not yet come. Only the present moment is real. If one understands this, one has already traversed half the path to enlightenment. We don't necessarily have to do grand things to cultivate our minds or live peacefully. Just knowing how to stop, how to breathe, how to listen, and how to sincerely cherish every moment is already practicing meditation. Sometimes happiness is simply eating a meal with family where no one is on their phone. It's walking slowly and feeling your feet touch the ground. It's listening to your own heart without judgment. It's telling yourself that everything in this world can change. And precisely because of that, we must live more fully. The story of Mr. Than is not just a belated regret, but also a reminder for us. If today we can still utter the words Father and Mother, let's say them with all our love. If we can still see each other, let's look with warm eyes. If we are still living in the embrace of family, let's know that it is not a given, but a blessing. Looking deeply into the nature of impermanence, we will no longer be afraid. On the contrary, we will know how to enjoy life more lightly and peacefully. Impermanence does not steal human happiness. Impermanence only teaches us how to love more deeply. So how can we apply this to everyday life? Start by eating more slowly, breathing more deeply, and speaking words of love before it's too late. Spend time with loved ones while you still have the chance. Put down your phone when talking with family. Be grateful for a simple meal and a peaceful place to sleep. Every day, practice meditation by fully engaging in each task. No need to go to a distant temple. Just knowing you are breathing is already touching the door to peace. How long one lives is not important. What matters is how many times one lives fully in this moment. When we clearly see impermanence, we no longer fear loss. We understand that our presence today is already a priceless gift. Instead of chasing dreams that may not come true, we can begin to love with the small things we have before our eyes. Life can be long, or it can be just a breath. But if we know how to live with mindfulness, every breath becomes miraculous. A cup of tea is not just hot water and tea leaves, but an awakening. A meal is not just food, but family affection. A bird's song is not just a sound, but a reminder that today we are still alive. Impermanence does not make us sad. It only makes us more grateful. And when we are grateful, we will smile more, feel lighter, and be more peaceful. If tomorrow may not come, then today is all there is. And if today we live fully, then no matter what tomorrow brings, it will no longer frighten us, because we have chosen to live with ourselves, with what is happening, with the truth that everything can change, but love can spread, pain can transform, and every moment can become a miracle. If we put our whole heart into it, we don't need to search for paradise anywhere far away, because paradise might be right in this very moment. Perhaps in this life, the hardest thing is not learning how to hold on, but learning how to let go. We are used to gathering everything into our hearts, from a small compliment to a great sorrow, from childhood memories to an unintentional remark that hurt us. Some people live their entire lives in the regret of the past. Others are constantly haunted by the future that has not yet arrived. And so, they forget that between those two lies the present, gradually passing with every breath. People often say that if you understand impermanence, you will naturally let go. But letting go is not something that happens overnight. It's like learning to breathe. It requires daily practice and mindfulness to recognize what to keep and what to release back to life. In Buddhist teachings, there is a saying, letting go is not discarding, but returning to life what no longer belongs to you. When we understand that everything in life has a time to come and go, we will feel lighter when facing separation. A flower blooms, then must wither. A rain comes, then will cease. A beautiful love, no matter how profound, will one day become a memory. Everything that is by our side today was never truly ours. It is merely a temporary karmic connection. When the conditions are right, it stays with us. When the conditions end, it departs. Seeing this, the heart will resist less, resent less, and suffer less over things we cannot keep. The person who understands impermanence is not a pessimist, but one who lives deeply and is mindful enough to cherish every unfolding moment. According to Buddhist teachings, the root of suffering is attachment. When we cling to something as ours, we fear losing it. When we think someone must love us forever, we fear the day they leave. When we believe that happiness must always be with us, we fear the day it disappears. This fear makes people live in tension and unease. In reality, the nature of all things in the world is impermanence. This is what the Buddha called the law of formation: existence, decay, and emptiness. Something that is born will exist for a period, then gradually change, and eventually dissolve. In that cycle, whoever goes against it will suffer. Whoever flows with it will find peace. Letting go is essentially flowing with the current of impermanence, realizing that nothing is permanent, not even oneself. The human mind often has a habit. The more it fears loss, the tighter it holds on. There are people who have left our lives, but we still cannot let go of them. Sometimes they have moved on, but we still stand still in a place where no one else is. We think we are holding on to the past to cherish it. But in reality, we are using the past as a chain to bind ourselves. Many people think that letting go is a failure, but only when they truly let go do they realize it is the beginning of freedom. It's like tidying up an old house filled with belongings. You have to discard broken items to make room for new light and air. Our minds are the same. If every corner is filled with old memories, how can peace find a place to stand? Among the stories of transformation from suffering to letting go, there is one very gentle story that deeply touches many hearts. It is the story of Huai Thu, a 32-year-old woman who once thought the past was something she could never give up. Her room used to be filled with pictures and souvenirs of a deep love. Pictures hung all over the walls. Small gifts lay in a wooden box, and a handwritten letter was tucked under her pillow, which she would take out and read every night. After the breakup, Thu lived like someone lost in her own room. Every corner evoked a memory. Sometimes she felt like she was living with ghosts who had long departed. Time made the pain subside a little, but every time she looked at those objects, she felt as if the wound had just torn open again. She didn't know she was living in a prison she had built herself. The person was gone, but she refused to leave that place. One afternoon, as Thu was about to clean her house, her mother walked into the room and gently said, "You cannot build a new house if you keep the old one in your heart." Thu stood still for quite a while. The seemingly simple sentence shattered the strong wall she had built for herself all this time. In that moment, she felt a part of herself awaken. She began to gather each item. The pictures, the gifts, the memories made her shed tears. But this time, she no longer felt resistance or pain as before. Instead, she felt grateful that they had once been a part of her life. She decided to donate them charity. She thought that if the things that once made her cry could bring smiles to others, that would truly be a beautiful ending. That day, as she walked out of the empty room, she realized her mind had also been cleansed. For the first time in many months, she sat down and felt her breath grow deeper. Her heart felt as if a long, worn chain had been removed. She understood that letting go was not losing, but freeing herself. She didn't forget the past, but now the past was no longer a chain, but a lesson that helped her grow. Perhaps life doesn't take anything without giving something else, but only when we are brave enough to let go can we make space to receive new things. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha taught that one who knows how to let go will find their mind light like a cloud in the sky. When we no longer cling to I and mine, we will not be afraid when all things change. Even this body is not permanent. The day we arrived, no one asked if we wanted to come. The day we depart, no one will ask if we are ready. And between these two, the most important thing is not to hold on to much, but to live deeply. The person who understands impermanence will cherish every moment, for they know that each moment is a gift that will not be repeated. The person who understands letting go is not weak. On the contrary, that is a resolute and courageous person, because they dare to look directly at the truth, to live with a mind free from attachment. From Huai Thu's story, we can conclude that letting go is the path to true peace. Sometimes it means letting go of a relationship that has run its course. Sometimes it means letting go of an expectation that wears us out. Sometimes it means letting go of a grudge that has been held for too long. And sometimes it means letting go of our own inflated ego, letting go to see ourselves as small in the vast universe, to view life with kinder eyes, to walk with lighter feet. When the mind is empty, love will have room to stay. When the heart is no longer agitated, joy will gently arrive. Life doesn't ask us to hold on to everything. Life only asks us to know that all things are conditioned. When they come, open your heart to receive. When they go, smile and bid farewell. The Buddha's words don't urge us to discard what has passed, but teach us how to view them with a new light. If you know contentment, desires cease. If you know impermanence, you will naturally let go. This is not mere theory, but a healing balm for the modern human soul. In a world that constantly demands more, we increasingly need to learn to let go. Let go of comparison. Let go of the pressure to succeed. Let go of the idea that we must be happy according to others' definitions. When we truly return to ourselves, every breath is a gift. Every waking day is a miracle. Practicing letting go is not just in thought, but in every small action. Tidy your room. Organize your work. Write down all the things that have troubled you, and then tear up that paper as a symbolic way of ending an old chapter. Express gratitude to those who have hurt you, for they helped you grow. Spend time in nature, because when you sit under a tree, you will see that every season has its own beauty. Fallen leaves are as beautiful as green leaves. The evening sun is as beautiful as the morning sun. When you see life this way, you will know that letting go is also a form of beauty. People think letting go is giving up, but in reality, letting go is to start anew. Today can be the beginning of a new journey. We don't know what lies ahead, but when the mind is light, every step is no longer heavy. Letting go is not an end, but a gift that impermanence brings to those ready to receive it. May anyone listening here who is holding on to something too old in their heart find enough lightness to release it. And once released, you will find that you have lost nothing at all, but rather rediscovered a more free version of yourself. In life, everyone yearns for peace, but peace does not come from a life without storms. Peace truly exists when our minds are strong enough to stand before storms without being swept away. Some people think that to be peaceful, they must find a very secluded place, far from the world, avoiding all contact with others. But that is merely a temporary escape. This world is inherently full of change. People's hearts change. Jobs fail. Health is good today, but may weaken tomorrow. Only when we understand impermanence do we realize that peace is not the absence of suffering, but knowing how to go through suffering with an unshaken mind. The Buddha taught that adversity is not an enemy, but a teacher that helps us understand ourselves better. And to learn lessons from adversity, mindfulness is the bright lamp in the darkness. Some anger comes very quickly, like a sudden gust of wind rising in a summer afternoon. We don't have time to think, only to react. We speak harsh words, we hurt others, and we also disturb our own minds. When the anger passes, we regret and blame ourselves. Why do I know I shouldn't be angry, yet I still get angry? Why do I know words can hurt loved ones, yet I can't control myself? That is the moment when people feel like they're standing at a crossroads. On one side is reason trying to remind us to be calm. On the other side are surging emotions, like a great wave. If we follow the wave, then meditation has no place. If we maintain mindfulness, the wave is not strong enough to sweep us away. According to Buddhist teachings, anger is just a temporary emotional wave. See anger, know it is anger, neither follow it nor push it away. When the mind is calm, old karma has no chance to manifest. This sounds simple, but to practice it is a whole process. It's like sitting by a river and watching the water flow. We don't jump into the water to fight the current. We just quietly observe. Emotions are like water. If we don't understand, we think they are us. If we understand, we know they are just temporary guests coming and going. A mindful person will realize that no emotion lasts forever. Every anger will eventually subside. Every pain will eventually heal. Every sorrow will one day fade like ink on an old page. Understanding this, we are no longer afraid when we realize we are angry. Just clearly know that we are angry, that anger is just a state of mind, and we are not that anger. The human mind inherently prefers to react rather than observe. Some people come home tired from work and get angry just by hearing a child call out loudly. Some people, just because a message wasn't replied to in time, deduce all sorts of things and start an argument. Some people are always in a state of readiness to fight against everything, like a fire constantly poised to ignite. But if the fire in the heart is not extinguished, it only exhausts the mind. The angrier we are, the harder it is to hear our inner voice. The more furious we are, the further we drift from happiness. Anger does not come to harm us, but if we are not mindful, we will harm ourselves. In many years of working with people under great psychological pressure, I realized one thing. People are not as afraid of adversity as they are of emotions. Emotions, when not understood, are like a swollen, red wound. We just want to cover it and leave it alone, but if not treated, that pain will become a more serious illness. Mindfulness is the remedy that helps the mind identify emotions without judgment. It is not about eliminating emotions, but understanding them to transform them. See anger, recognize that we are angry. See sadness, know that we are sad. These statements sound simple, but to live by them, we must practice every day. And those who know how to live that way are often peaceful amidst adversities that others might deem insurmountable. In everyday life, there is a very simple story that clearly reflects the power of mindfulness. It is the story of Antoine, 37, a man successful in his career, but very hot-tempered at home. Everyone who looked at him thought he was a pillar, strong and mature, but inside him were constantly rising waves of emotion. Every time he got angry, the whole family went silent, knowing that just one wrong word could unleash a storm. He often scolded his wife over trivial matters, yelled at his children for not doing exactly what he wanted. He didn't realize he was sowing fear in the hearts of his loved ones. One day, after an argument, he yelled at his son intensely. The boy was silent for a moment, then softly said, "Daddy, you scare me." That sentence was like a knife cutting into the father's heart. He was stunned, not knowing what to say. For the first time, he saw himself through the eyes of another. A scary father, not a loving one. That night, he couldn't sleep. He thought about his 6-year-old boy, about his fearful eyes, and about himself over the past years. He realized he was living like a bomb, ready to explode at any moment, not because he was a bad person, but because he didn't know how to control his emotions. He thought adults had the right to be angry, and whoever made a mistake had to bear it. But he didn't realize that his anger was making his family lose trust. He felt he needed to change, but didn't know where to start. Then he remembered what a friend had once shared. Just 1 minute of mindfulness can save us from a lifetime of afflictions. From that day on, he started practicing a very small thing. Every time anger arose, he wouldn't speak immediately. He would just stand still and breathe very slowly. He would count 10 breaths before reacting. 10 breaths might seem small, but he knew it saved him from many major mistakes. Sometimes at work, things didn't go his way. But the 10 breaths helped him speak in a gentler tone. One day, he spilled a glass of water. But the 10 breaths helped him remember that his child was just a child. Mistakes are normal for learning. Every day, he practiced this way. And gradually, anger was no longer as frightening as before. It didn't disappear, but it no longer had the power to overwhelm everything else. The ability to keep his mind steady for 1 minute changed Antoine's life. His family gradually grew warmer. Arguments decreased. His children started running to hug him every time he came home. His wife began to smile more often. He understood that this was not a miracle from outside, but the result of his willingness to look within. He no longer ran from his emotions, no longer let emotions lead him. He approached emotions with awareness. That is the power of mindfulness. 1 minute of mindfulness can save a lifetime of afflictions. 1 minute of reflection can change a destiny. And he understood that adversity came to teach him that precious lesson. The Buddha taught that the mind is the root of all karma. What we sow in the mind, we will reap the fruit of. When the mind is angry, words will be harsh. When the mind is greedy, the eyes will always look at what it does not yet have. When the mind is doubtful, anyone who approaches will make us wary. But when the mind is at peace, everything becomes light. Mindfulness is not about meditating for a long time or chanting a lot of Buddha's name, but first and foremost, living mindfully in every small moment, clearly seeing oneself, clearly feeling one's breath, keeping the mind from chasing after temporary things. A mindful person will find that adversity is no longer frightening, because the mind has a place to lean on. Anger no longer destroys, because we no longer identify with it. We know anger is a guest that comes and goes. We just need to keep the house of our mind clean and bright. From that story, we can draw a lesson. To find peace of mind, first, we must learn to look within. Don't rush to react. Don't rush to judge. Breathe and clearly see your emotions. When angry, sit still for a moment and ask yourself what is truly happening. When sad, recognize that this emotion is also just a temporary guest. When worried, remind yourself that yesterday there were so many things you worried about that ultimately turned out fine. In this way, mindfulness is built little by little in life. No need to wait until you have free time. No need for perfect conditions. Every breath is an opportunity to return. The healing message is that peace comes from living truly mindfully. We don't need to eliminate emotions. We just need to learn how to walk with emotions without losing inner peace. The mindful person will not seek happiness afar, but will find happiness in every breath. When the mind is serene, adversity also becomes a lesson. When the mind is clear, darkness also becomes a path leading to the dawn. I hope that anyone listening here will be able to try, just once, to hold their mind still for 1 minute when anger arises. And when you overcome that moment, you will see that life has never been so beautiful. There are moments in life when you suddenly realize that most of what makes you tired does not come from work or external circumstances, but from unnecessary words. A hasty reaction can weigh down your whole day. An argument to win can keep you tossing and turning all night. An inconsiderate word can sometimes shatter a beautiful relationship that took years to build. After experiencing many things, we slowly understand that life doesn't need too many words. What is most needed is a calm mind. And when you understand impermanence, understand that everything in life is constantly changing, nothing is fixed, you will see that keeping silent is not endurance or weakness, but a form of wisdom refined through observation, contemplation, and compassion. Impermanence makes people speak less, because the more one speaks, the more one reveals attachment to the ego. Everyone has experienced times when they just wanted to speak their mind, to prove themselves right, to make others listen to their opinions. However, the truth is that no one can control the opinions of others. People change according to emotions, life changes daily, and body and mind change every instant. Therefore, the more mature one becomes, the more one understands that silence is a choice that brings lightness to oneself. It's like standing before a calm lake. If you throw a pebble into it, the water will ripple. Our minds are the same. Every word spoken, if not with mindfulness, is like a pebble stirring the lake of the mind. When stirred, wisdom cannot illuminate. A wise person knows to keep their mind calm before doing anything else. That answer was like a bell waking many people up. It made listeners feel not that the master was teaching, but as if he was sharing what he had lived for 20 years. His silence had no coercion. It was natural, stemming from an understanding of the nature of life. From that story, we learn that silence is not weakness. The weak must speak loudly to prove their strength. The weak must speak a lot to get attention. But truly strong people don't need to argue. They are strong because their minds are stable. They are firm in their hearts. They are not disturbed by external noise. The silence of the wise is like the root of a great tree, needing no explanation, firm against the wind. When you don't need to win against anyone, then you are truly victorious over yourself. It's no coincidence that the Buddha taught that the greatest victory is victory over oneself. Looking back at the arguments in your life, you will see that there were times when if you had remained silent, things would have been much lighter. But because of an overinflated ego, we forced ourselves to speak. And after speaking, we carried an additional burden. Master Hien chose Kiros, not because he didn't know how to speak, but because he knew what to say and what to keep silent about. That is wisdom. In the scriptures, it is said that words are like lotuses. Lotuses grow from mud, but are not stained by the mud. A wise person is the same. Even amidst a noisy world, their words are always pure, bringing benefit to others. The Buddha also taught that if words are not true, not timely, and do not bring benefit, it is best to remain silent, because silence at that time is sowing good seeds for oneself. The patriarch also taught that guarding one's speech is guarding half a lifetime of peace. Many people think that spiritual practice means doing great things, reading many scriptures, performing countless complex rituals. But sometimes, just cultivating the mouth is enough to transform a very large karmic force. When the mouth speaks kind words, the mind turns towards good. When the mouth does not speak hurtful words, the body avoids trouble. When the mouth does not argue, the mind becomes quiet. And when the mind is quiet, wisdom will manifest like the moon, reflecting on a ripple-free lake. The lesson from the silence of a practitioner is the lesson of patience with one's own mind. You don't have to go to a temple to cultivate silence. You just need to observe whenever the mind arises with the urge to speak out of anger. You just need to let a few seconds pass before speaking. You just need to ask yourself if this statement will bring peace to anyone. When you know how to stop yourself, you are cultivating yourself. Someone asked if silence would be seen as weakness. But the truth is, the wise remain silent to keep their minds pure. The wise remain silent to preserve their merit for themselves. Therefore, silence is not defeat, but the best strategy to maintain peace. Everyone in life spends a lot of time chasing fame to prove themselves. But in the end, what people crave most is inner peace. And peace never comes from argument. It comes from letting go of the ego and living authentically with a gentle heart. The message of silence is not to tell you to passively endure in a negative way. Silence is not repression. Silence is keeping the mind calm so that wisdom can illuminate. Silence is refusing useless conversations so that the mind is not pulled into unnecessary afflictions. Silence is taking a step back to see the true nature of the problem instead of being clouded by emotions. And silence is also a way to love yourself, because you don't let your words hurt anyone, and you don't let others' words hurt you. You choose peace over winning. You choose tranquility over proving yourself. And each time, you are sowing a seed of blessing for yourself. If you want to apply silence to your daily life, you can start with very small things. Every morning when you wake up, just sit still for a moment before starting your new day. Take a deep breath and observe your mind. When you go to work and encounter something you dislike, take a breath before reacting. When someone says something that upsets you, listen fully. Then choose to speak gently or remain silent if your emotions are high. When there's conflict in the family, listen with compassion instead of letting your ego interfere. When faced with injustice, if you need to speak, do so with calmness, not letting emotions pull you. And when you need to be silent with understanding, not repression. Just practice, little by little, and you will see your mind change. Life will also become lighter. Many afflictions will simply fall away. Peace will come when you know how to keep your mind from getting caught up in things not worth worrying about. When you understand that life is impermanent, you will no longer waste words on unimportant things. You will value inner peace more than verbal victories or losses. You will choose silence as a companion to help you walk the path of spiritual practice amidst a busy life. And you will realize that sometimes you don't need to say anything at all. Just a peaceful heart is enough. The one who understands impermanence will naturally let go of all afflictions. The one who understands the value of silence will maintain tranquility in every breath. And when the mind is at peace, life will naturally be peaceful. Perhaps you are tired, not because life is too difficult, but because your heart holds too much. If you want too much, you have to hold on to a lot. If you hold on to a lot, you have to worry a lot. If you worry a lot, you get tired, and your mind has no room to breathe. In that moment, if you look deeply into the nature of impermanence, you will see a very simple truth. But everyone takes a very long time to understand. Everything changes eventually. The things you cling to tightly today may mean nothing tomorrow. The things you sacrifice your energy to chase after do not bring lasting peace. The more upheavals one experiences, the more one realizes that living simply is the most convenient way to navigate this life. Not convenient in a material sense, but convenient for the soul, convenient for serenity, and convenient for the entire journey of overcoming impermanence. Many people think that living simply means poverty, but in reality, living simply is a very strange form of wealth. Rich in lightness of heart, rich in knowing contentment, rich in not being bound by desires. A person who lives simply is like a traveler carrying only a small bag. They are not weighed down by suitcases full of expectations. Therefore, they walk lighter than others. But a person who carries too many desires is like someone carrying their entire house on their back. Every step is heavy, making them stiff. Their words become heavy. Their breath becomes exhausted. They forget that life doesn't have to be as complicated as they make it. In Buddhism, living simply is a crucial foundation of practice. The Buddha taught that the root of suffering lies in desire. When desires are many, the mind generates deluded thoughts. When deluded thoughts are many, the mind becomes agitated. And when agitated, one cannot see the truth. Living simply means reducing the things that agitate the mind. Not abandoning everything, but reducing unnecessary things. It's like walking into a cluttered room. You feel suffocated. But if you clear it out, the space immediately becomes open, and you feel comfortable. The mind is also like a room. If it's filled with desires, the mind is always cramped. If desires are fewer, the mind will have space for peace to bloom. The human mind inherently likes to accumulate. We want more because we fear scarcity. We shop a lot because we fear others' judgment. We pursue standards set by society, and then forget what we truly need. In work, many people constantly chase higher positions, so pressure steadily increases. In relationships, many people want to be loved their way, so they bind themselves with expectations. In daily life, people like to compare themselves and then feel inadequate. When the mind doesn't know how to live simply, no matter how much it has, it feels lacking. But when it knows how to live simply, even with little, it feels sufficient. People suffer from comparing themselves, from winning and losing. People are tired because their desires never stop. But most of those desires are based on impermanence. What we have today may be different tomorrow. What we consider important today may lose its value in a few years. Yet, the human heart repeats the habit of constantly seeking and clinging. If you look directly at this cause, you will see that simplicity is the way to free the mind from the vortex of desire. People who live simply possess a very valuable quality. a soft heart. When they don't have too much to protect, they don't need to stiffen to defend themselves. A soft heart is empathetic. A soft heart knows when to step back. A soft heart is not broken by the vicissitudes of daily life. This softness is evident in their gentle words and slow steps. People who live simply are not in a hurry because they are not chasing anything. They don't compete. They don't emphasize being better than others. They just walk at a moderate pace to enjoy every moment that is unfolding. In modern life, many people walk so fast they forget why they are walking. But people who live simply always remember that life is not a race. They are not afraid to be late because they know that what is important is to maintain inner peace. There is a very beautiful story about simplicity that I once heard in the Mekong Delta. People tell of an old woman named Ba who lived in a small house by a canal. This house was very special because it had no gate, and even the front door was never locked. Anyone passing by could stop in and sit as if in their own yard. Neighbors once asked her if she wasn't afraid of thieves living like that. Mrs. Ba smiled and said that there was nothing valuable to lose, and what was most precious, thieves couldn't take. People asked what that most precious thing was. She pointed to her heart and said it was her mind. Those words silenced those around her. A simple statement, yet it contained a lifetime of understanding about impermanence and the value of simplicity. Mrs. Ba's gateless house was not just a cool shelter. It was a symbol of openness, trust, and lightness toward life. She wasn't afraid of losing things because she had nothing for anyone to covet. She didn't worry about guarding possessions because she knew that material things were temporary. She lived freely because she didn't place her value in external things. Visitors to her house said there was always an unusual sense of peace there. There was always a warm pot of tea ready. There was an old wooden chair, comfortable and smelling of sunlight. There was Mrs. Ba's gentle inquiry, light as the wind. She said, "If you live simply, your mind will be at ease. Those with few desires have few afflictions. Those who want to hold a lot must fear a lot. But those who have nothing to fear naturally feel light." Looking back at the teachings in the scriptures, we understand even more clearly the value of this lifestyle. The Buddha once taught that to end suffering, one must abandon craving. Craving is not just material desire, but also the desire for fame, control, and superiority. In the Four Noble Truths, the cause of suffering is craving. This is the truth that the Buddha realized. When craving remains, the mind is bound. When desire remains, the mind is agitated. And when agitated, one cannot see the truth. In many sutras, the Buddha reminded that a person who understands the Dharma is not one who has much, but one who knows contentment. A simple meal is enough to nourish the body. A peaceful heart is enough to nourish the mind. Many ancient Zen masters also taught that life is like a dewdrop on a blade of grass. Wealth is like a dewdrop. Anger is like a dewdrop. Success and failure are like dewdrops. When the sun rises, all dissipate. One who sees this will live lightly and no longer cling to things that cannot be held. From that philosophy, the lesson drawn is truly profound. Living simply is not abandoning life, but returning to the core of happiness. It's not about lacking, but about knowing not to need too much. It's not about asceticism, but about selecting what is important to keep in life. Many people live their whole lives accumulating, but in the end, they still feel empty, while others, who don't have much, feel complete. Because those with many desires are always anxious. Those with few desires are always lighthearted. A person who lives simply does not place their happiness in things that can be lost. They place it in their mind, in their way of life, in human connection, and in knowing contentment. Thanks to this, they pass through impermanence very naturally. The healing message of simplicity is something anyone can apply to life. You don't have to get rid of everything to live minimally. Just ask yourself in every situation, is this item truly necessary? Is this worry something I invented myself? Is what I'm competing for worth losing my peace over? Does this relationship need so many expectations? Is this statement necessary? When you slow down and ask these questions, you are stepping onto the path of simple living. You are opening a new space for your mind. When space appears, peace will fill it, and lightness will come. And impermanence will no longer be so frightening because your mind is no longer entangled. You can start by tidying a small corner of your home. When the space is tidy, the mind will be more at peace. You can reduce the time spent chasing standards set by others. Instead, dedicate time to listening to what you truly need. Learn to be content with simple things. A cozy meal with family can be much more precious than many lavish parties. A full night's sleep can be more valuable than nights spent staying up late chasing fame. A sincere conversation can be worth more than complex relationships. When you choose simple things, your mind will naturally touch upon depth without needing to try. Living simply is an art of living, a way to help you face impermanence with lightness instead of resistance. It's a way for every change to become a lesson instead of pain. It's a way for the mind to always remain soft, even when life is stormy. When you know how to be content with what you have, when you desire less, when you allow your mind to rest, you will see that impermanence is no longer a source of sadness. It becomes a reminder that happiness lies in very small things. The one who lives simply passes through impermanence, like one walking on a wide road, not worrying about stumbling due to heavy luggage. They are light, free, and happy in a very natural way. There are days in life when we step out, carrying invisible burdens in our hearts. A harsh word, a cold glance, or a small misunderstanding is enough to make our hearts constrict. People live amidst many changes in life, so no one can avoid being hurt. But what truly hurts us is not just what happened, but how we hold on to it in our hearts. When we understand impermanence, understand that everything changes, we realize that anger and blame are just like dark clouds fleeting across the sky of the mind. Holding on to them only darkens our hearts, but letting them go allows the inner sky to open up. Impermanence is not just a Buddhist philosophy, but an obvious truth of life. Every breath taken, every day that passes, every person who appears and then leaves our lives, all are manifestations of impermanence. When we understand this, we no longer cling to the pains that others inflict, because sometimes the very people who hurt us are enduring deeper, more hidden sorrows than we imagine. Understanding is the key to opening the door to inner peace. And forgiveness is not because the other person deserves it, but because we ourselves deserve to be lighthearted. From a Buddhist perspective, emotional wounds do not arise spontaneously. They appear from our own attachment. When the mind is entangled in right and wrong, winning and losing, we will see others doing wrong to us and believe they must be responsible for our emotions. But the Buddha clearly showed that all emotions arise from the mind. If our mind is disturbed by an insult, it means our mind is not yet expansive enough. If we see others as unreasonable and we become angry, it means we are using others' ignorance to create difficulty for ourselves. Clinging to the ego makes us react more strongly to small conflicts. We often forget that everyone in life is fighting their own battles, and many hurtful actions are sometimes just silent cries for help. Humans are inherently sensitive to the words and attitudes of others. A small criticism can make us sad all day. A loved one's neglect can make us think for weeks. We easily forget that the person opposite us is also a human struggling with life, sometimes even more difficult than us. When someone gets angry with us, our first reaction is self-defense and anger. Seldom do we pause to look deeper into them. We don't know what pressures they are under, what pains they are experiencing. We only see the outward outburst and forget the inner root. Therefore, the more we mature in consciousness, the more we look at people with compassion. There are times when we think someone hates us, looks down on us, or deliberately tries to hurt us. In reality, sometimes they are just people burdened by life, like a full glass of water, where just a slight tremble is enough to make the water spill. Humans, when tired, are the same. Just a small stimulus can make emotions overflow, even if it's no one's fault. When we understand this, we will no longer view every hurt as an intentional insult aimed at us. We realize that they are in too much pain, and that pain inadvertently spreads to us. The Buddhist channel Lin Ung would like to tell the story of Huang. A rideshare driver is a testament to that. One ordinary morning, Huang picked up a male passenger. As soon as he got into the car, the passenger appeared tense, breathing heavily, and constantly urging him to drive faster. Huang knew the streets were crowded and he couldn't go fast, but the passenger kept complaining, saying Huang was driving slowly, didn't know the way, and didn't care about his job. Huang felt heavy-hearted, but didn't respond. He just drove in silence, keeping his mind calm through every turn. At one point, the passenger almost shouted, "Don't you understand what I'm saying? Drive faster! I'm in a hurry!" The passenger's expression grew increasingly agitated, as if inside him was a great, uncontrollable storm. At the end of the trip, as the car stopped, Huang intended to say goodbye to end on a peaceful note. But unexpectedly, the passenger stopped short. His voice suddenly lowered and then choked up. He said, "I'm sorry for yelling earlier. My wife just passed away from cancer. I couldn't get her to the hospital in time for the last visit. This morning, I have to go sign papers. I'm just so tired." Huang was stunned. All the passenger's earlier anger and harshness suddenly seemed small. Huang no longer felt angry. Only compassion remained in his heart. In that moment, Huang realized that the person who hurts us is sometimes the person who is hurting more than us. A great loss can make people vulnerable and unable to control their emotions. They don't intentionally make us sad. They just don't know any other way to gently navigate life when they themselves are exhausted. Their anger is the faint cry of a wounded heart. The Buddhist scriptures teach that when we understand the suffering of others, compassion naturally arises. The Buddha once said, "To end anger, one must look deeply. Look deeply to see that the cause of anger does not lie in their actions, but in the pain within their hearts." When we see this, we no longer blame. We only feel compassion. Anger, if not nourished by understanding, will only make our minds heavier. Conversely, understanding will dissolve the walls that separate us. When we shine the light of understanding on another's suffering, anger will dissipate, like darkness dissipates when the sun shines. There are teachings from ancient masters that anger is like holding a burning coal to throw at another person. Before throwing it, we are the ones who get burned. One who harbors hatred for a long time only hurts themselves. The tighter we hold on to anger, the more restless our mind becomes. Forgiveness is not for the other person to receive anything, but for us to put down the burning coal that is scorching our hand. Forgiveness is not because the other person deserves it, but because we deserve peace. Forgiveness is not accepting that they are right, but accepting that our own heart needs rest. The lesson Huang learned that day was not just an experience, but an awakening. He understood that everyone who enters his life carries their own story. Some are happy, some are sad, some are lost. The other person wasn't scolding him. The other person was scolding their own pain. From then on, Huang began to look at people differently. Whenever he met a difficult customer, he no longer rushed to conclude that they were bad-tempered or intentionally difficult. He reminded himself that they might be under a kind of pressure he couldn't see. Similarly, in this life, we often encounter people who hurt us. It might be a hot-tempered colleague, an insensitive relative, a friend who disappoints us, or a stranger who speaks harsh words. But if we can pause for a moment to observe more deeply, we will see that behind irritability often lies insecurity. Behind a shout might be despair. Behind an insult might be the weariness of life. When we understand this, we will choose not to react with anger, but with calmness. The wounds in the human heart do not disappear naturally, but they can be healed. And the fastest path to healing is understanding. When we understand, we no longer blame. When we understand, our hearts soften. And when the heart has softened, peace will reside there. The person who once hurt us is not always a bad person. They are just someone struggling with the currents of life. We cannot know what they are battling. So when they inadvertently hurt us, instead of asking why they did it, we can ask why they are in so much pain that they cannot control themselves. The Buddha once taught that an angry person is not strong, but weak. A person who doesn't know how to control their emotions allows emotions to control them. But a person who knows how to use compassion can diffuse the anger in others. A gentle word can soothe a suffering heart. A kind smile can dissolve the tension of the person opposite. And a silence full of understanding can save someone's whole day. When we practice looking at life with the light of impermanence and compassion, we will gradually be less hurt. Not because people become better, but because our hearts grow larger. When the mind is expansive, all matters shrink. When understanding is deep, all anger and resentment dissipate. We are no longer controlled by others' emotions, because we know that everyone carries a burden we don't see. In daily life, we can practice small steps. When someone gets angry with us, take a long breath and ask ourselves, what suffering are they going through? When we hear criticism, try, instead of reacting, to look at their attitude and the tension in their eyes. When someone hurts us, remember that they might be hurting much more than we are. Our minds will lighten. All storms will subside. And the most important lesson is that we don't forgive for the other person to change. We forgive so our hearts are no longer bound. We let go not to forget what happened, but to move on without carrying the cuts that make our hearts bleed. Forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves. Understanding the pain of others is a way to heal our own pain. When we look at life with a compassionate heart, we will be more peaceful amidst its storms. When we look at people with the light of impermanence, we will know that all pain will eventually pass. And when we look at ourselves with generosity, we will find our hearts much lighter. From there, the path ahead will be more open, brighter, and more peaceful than ever. This life operates according to laws that humans, no matter how hard they try, cannot reverse. Among countless such laws, impermanence is the most obvious truth, yet also the one most often forgotten. We live each day as if everything will last forever, as if those we love will always be by our side, as if the hand we touch today will remain intact tomorrow. Until a sudden change occurs, we are startled to realize that time never stops to wait for anyone. Everything around us is subtly changing every hour, every minute. Here this morning, we might not meet this afternoon. Today, we might have an opportunity, but tomorrow, it might not be there. The world always operates in its own way, not according to our wishes or emotions. One who understands impermanence naturally knows how to cherish. One who sees the fragility of life will no longer want to postpone love or underestimate what they hold in their hands. Impermanence is not something to fear, but a tell, reminding us to live more fully. Because when we know that every moment is precious and will never repeat exactly the same, we will cherish every word, every glance, every time we sit by the side of someone we love. Sometimes we don't need to seek happiness in grand things, because sometimes happiness is simply an evening meal with the whole family present, or a child's peaceful smile in the house. But humans are often complacent and think there's plenty of time. Sometimes we postpone an apology to a loved one, postpone a call home to our parents, postpone a family meal with the excuse of being busy. We keep thinking, tomorrow I'll make up for it. Tomorrow I'll care more. Tomorrow I'll love more. But that tomorrow sometimes never comes. If we clearly see impermanence, we will learn to look at life with gentler and more authentic eyes. We will be less angry, less concerned with right or wrong, and less competitive over trivial matters. Because ultimately, the most important thing is that those we love are still here, and we still have the opportunity to be kind to them. In Buddhist teachings, impermanence is one of the 3 Dharma seals. The Buddha taught that all phenomena are impermanent. Everything that has form is changing every instant. This body is impermanent. Emotions are impermanent. This life is impermanent. Once we understand that human life is merely a fragile breath, we will no longer cling too much to gains and losses, no longer be overly sad about undesired things. The afflictions we have held for years are actually insignificant when placed before the impermanence unfolding every second. That is not a theoretical piece of advice, but a truth that anyone who slows down enough to observe will immediately perceive. When we still think everything is permanent, we easily become indifferent. When we see that all things are fragile, we naturally know how to live each day fully. Humans are creatures easily deceived by familiarity. When something appears too frequently, we assume it is a given. Many young people live far from home for studies or work. In the first few years away from home, they miss home intensely, calling every day just to hear their mother's voice. However, as work consumes them, busyness makes them forget. Gradually, calls home become once a week, then once a month. The love is still there, but habit blurs appreciation. We assume parents are still healthy, still there, still waiting for us every evening, still remembering us at every meal. But in reality, parents age daily. Hair grays, health declines. And then one day, we are startled to hear the doctor's words or see images of our parents looking more tired than before. Everything changes so quickly that we don't have time to mentally prepare. At that point, people often say, if only I had spent more time, if only I had called home more often, if only I had apologized or said thank you sooner. But impermanence doesn't wait for us to say, if only. It silently unfolds like our own breath, not bustling, not noisy, but powerful enough to change an entire life. One of the reasons we forget the preciousness of the present is the tendency to wait for something better in the future. We think when we have more money, we will love our family more. When our job is stable, we will spend time with our children. When our home is more complete, we will slow down to enjoy life. But the future is uncertain, and impermanence reminds us that all reunions are finite. Many things we thought would last forever turn out to happen only once in a lifetime. Many values we took for granted are things we can never get back once lost. The person who lives with impermanence is not pessimistic, but one who understands life to live better in the present. I want to tell you the story of Min An, a student living away from home. She was an introverted person, rarely expressing her feelings, but she always loved her father in a silent way. On her phone, she had a picture with her father taken when she was about to leave for the city for college. In the photo, her father smiled gently, a smile that had been directed only at those he loved his whole life. It was a hurried photo she took when her father wasn't paying attention. Min An always looked at that photo when she was tired, but never said a word of thanks or love to her father. She thought the words, "thank you," were very ordinary and could be said any time. And like many others, she thought her father was very strong and healthy. There was no need to worry about anything yet. She had planned to take her father for a general checkup this Tet holiday to reassure him. Then she would spend more time returning home to eat meals with her father, sharing stories from school. But plans remained. Plans. And everything kept being put off with the excuse of busy. One night, while studying in her dorm, Min An received news that her father had been hospitalized due to a stroke. She quickly grabbed her jacket and ran straight to the bus station. Throughout the journey, she couldn't stop thinking about the photo on her phone. Her heart only wished her father was still conscious to hear her say the words she had never dared to speak. When she arrived at the hospital, seeing her father lying in bed, his face pale from the stroke, tears streamed uncontrollably. She touched her father's hand and was startled to find it colder than usual. She secretly thought, "This might be the last time I see my father like this." That truth made her gasp for breath. All the plans to care for her father, all the unspoken words of gratitude, all became a huge void that she felt she couldn't fill. When her father regained consciousness, although his voice was weak and unclear, he still recognized her. She cried and said, "Thank you, Father, for being with me all these years. I love you so much." Her father smiled and squeezed her hand tighter, as if to say he always knew it, even though she had never said it. That moment became a lesson Min-an would never forget. She understood that nothing guarantees that those we love will always wait for us. Postponing love is sometimes the cause of the most heartbreaking regrets in life. Impermanence awakened her, not waiting until loss to regret, not waiting until parting to love, not waiting until facing the fragility of life to realize how long she had been unmindful. In the Dhammapada, there is a verse, "Life is fragile, only a few inches long. Who knows what tomorrow will bring?" That is not a threat, but a truth, to remind us to live more deeply in every breath. When the Buddha taught about impermanence, he didn't want us to be sad or scared, but wanted us to open our hearts and speak words of love while we still can. He taught to cherish what we have, because once lost, we cannot find it again in the same way. If we understand impermanence, we will know to care for our loved ones more. We will know to say, "Thank you," simple yet precious words. We will know to hold the hand of our loved one a little longer. We will know to overlook someone's fault to maintain the peace of the family. After experiencing her father's illness, Min-an changed a lot. She took the time to call her parents every day. She was no longer shy about expressing love. She understood that love must be expressed while there is still time. People sometimes don't need grand gifts to feel appreciated. A timely inquiry, a sincere thank you, or just a few minutes of sitting together is enough to warm one's heart. To cherish is not to do great things, but to do small things with great sincerity. Those who cherish often live very gently. They don't stay angry for long. They don't hold on to old worries. They know that anger only wastes the little time they have to live together. When we understand impermanence, we no longer want to argue much. We no longer want to compete over small matters. We will choose peace over winning or losing, because winning an argument may not necessarily make us happier. But maintaining harmony and love in the family certainly makes our minds much more peaceful. The healing message that impermanence sends to everyone is to live with a whole heart. Let those we love know how important they are to us. Say thank you to your parents. No matter how grown up or successful you are, hug the child in your house when they need you. Put down your phone during family meals to truly look at each other with caring eyes. Know how to pause in the race of life so as not to miss what is precious. Practice forgiving each other more, because who knows, others might be going through pains we don't see. Practice cherishing every encounter, every moment of the present. One day, looking back, you will see that these small things were the greatest happiness life gave you. Impermanence teaches us to live kinder lives because no one knows how much time they have left to do good. Impermanence teaches us to love right now because it's not certain that tomorrow our loved ones will still hear our words. Impermanence teaches us to cherish the simplest things because what is here today may become a memory tomorrow. When we understand this, we live not in fear, but in gratitude. Grateful that every day we wake up, we still have the opportunity to love, to speak beautiful words, to offer wholesome actions, and grateful that we still have loved ones by our side. Life inherently revolves according to the law of impermanence, so people are often caught in whirlpools of suffering, sometimes without even realizing why they are so tired. There are mornings when one wakes up with a heavy heart, as if carrying an extra stone on one's shoulder. There are evenings spent alone in a familiar room, yet feeling lost, as if standing in the middle of a vast desert. But the older we get, the more fears we have to carry. Fear of losing what we have, fear of not being able to hold on to what we tried to build, fear of work, fear of failure, fear of hurt, fear of the judging eyes of others. Ultimately, we fear that we are not strong enough to continue. All these things stem from a simple truth that few want to face. Everything changes. All emotions fluctuate. All events come and go. Impermanence is always present in every breath. Many people hear the word impermanence and think it is negative. But in reality, impermanence does not come to cause us pain, but to remind us to be lighter in every moment of our lives. When impermanence is clearly seen, suffering is no longer a condemnation. It is just a passing rain shower. Rain comes, then stops. Sadness comes, then dissipates. We fall, then get back up. The important thing is not how many storms life throws at us, but whether our minds are peaceful enough to stand firm amidst those changes. That is why Buddhist teachings call suffering a truth that must be looked at directly to understand it, and then transform it. Not running away, not hiding, not suppressing, but simply looking at it with awareness. In Buddhism, suffering is not a story to complain about, but a lesson to contemplate. Right in the Four Noble Truths, the first teaching the Buddha gave to the 5 ascetics, he clearly pointed out that the root of suffering lies in clinging. We cling to work to prove our self-worth. We cling to a relationship to find security. We cling to our own image to avoid being judged by others. If only everything went as we wished, life would have nothing to worry about. But life always has things beyond our control. When reality doesn't match expectations, we immediately suffer. When change happens too quickly, we quickly resist, making ourselves even more tired. Only by deeply understanding the nature of all things as impermanent do we realize that there is nothing to cling to forever, and nothing worth strenuously resisting. Therefore, the Buddha taught that transforming suffering does not await a time when life becomes easier, but begins with transforming our own minds. When the mind changes, circumstances will change. When the mind softens, storms naturally subside. When the mind brightens, everything has a path. Many people understand this principle, but are still unsure where to begin. Does practicing meditation require going to a temple or having a teacher? Does chanting Buddha's name require being a long-time lay practitioner? Does reciting sutras require understanding every single word to be effective? Does doing good deeds require something grand to bring merit? But in reality, all paths in Buddhism go from simple to profound, and always begin with sincerity. As long as our minds are oriented towards goodness, everything will naturally follow. A friend of mine once went through an extremely difficult time. Work was not going well, debts piled up, family discord, and health deteriorated. He said that every morning he opened his eyes, he felt as if he was being drowned in a series of pressures. Going to work, he feared being reprimanded. Coming home, he feared not having enough money for his children. At night, he feared tomorrow would be worse than today. When he had nowhere left to turn, he began to seek out a temple, just hoping for a peaceful place to sit for a while. Initially, he knew nothing about meditation. He just stood and listened to the temple bell. Then one time, the master at the temple said something that awakened him. "Let your mind calm down a little, so your heart suffers less." He didn't understand much, but he followed. Every evening, he spent a few minutes sitting still, not trying to control his breath, just observing it, go in and out. Gradually, he noticed the chaos in his head grow quieter. That moment, even if only for a few minutes, helped him feel that life still had a way out. Meditation is not a sophisticated technique. Meditation is simply a way to bring the mind back to where it belongs in the present. When the mind is at peace, suffering will naturally dissipate. Many people say meditation is difficult because they can't control their thoughts. But in reality, the purpose of meditation is not to force the mind to stop thinking, but to understand that thoughts are merely like clouds in the sky, and our mind is like the vast space behind them. No matter how dense the clouds, they cannot forever cover the sky, and eventually they will drift away. Many people choose to chant Buddha's name because the name Amitabha is like a breath that helps the mind stop and not wander into endless worries. Chanting a Buddha's name is like lighting an incense stick in the heart. Some people say that when they chant, they don't feel anything. But after a while, if they miss a day of chanting, they feel uneasy. That is when the Buddha's name becomes a string holding their mind, preventing it from falling into the deep emotional pits. When the mind is busy chanting, it no longer has room for anger or blame. When the mind is placed on the Buddha's name, it is no longer pulled back to old, painful memories. Chanting Buddha's name is a way to bring the mind back and allow it to rest for a while. Others find relief through reciting sutras. Reciting sutras is not to pray, but to reflect on oneself. Each verse of a sutra is like a mirror, reflecting what we have done and are doing in this life. Sometimes we are startled to realize our groundless anger. Sometimes we feel ashamed of our own stubbornness. Sometimes we are moved to tears, realizing we have hurt others unknowingly. Sutras do not judge. Sutras only reflect so we can see ourselves within them. A person who knows how to reflect on themselves is one who has begun the path to liberation. Alongside meditation, chanting Buddha's name, and reciting sutras, doing good deeds is also an incredibly effective method of transformation. When we do good deeds, our minds think less of ourselves, thus becoming less self-centered. When we help those in need, we see that our own suffering is not the greatest, and our minds lighten. When we give, we create wholesome energy that helps reduce negative karma. It doesn't have to be a grand gesture, for even a word of encouragement is enough to bring blessings. A timely apology can mend a relationship. A kind act can resolve a long-standing misunderstanding. Good deeds don't require us to be wealthy, only to have a compassionate heart. To speak of the power of Buddhist teachings to transform suffering, I recall the story of a woman named Thu, a literature teacher at a suburban school. Her life was not affluent, but peaceful, until her son was in an accident and required long-term treatment. Every day she would go to school and then rush to the hospital to care for her son. Her family, already struggling, became even more destitute. Her health gradually deteriorated, and her mind felt as if it was about to collapse. She once said that just hearing the phone ring made her heart tighten with fear of bad news. In her despair, a friend took her to a temple. At first, she just hoped for a place to sit down. But then she heard the abbot teach, "Everyone in life has their own karma. Karma comes to awaken us, not to destroy us. Look at karma with eyes of compassion, and no matter how heavy it is, it will gradually lighten." Ms. Thu began to try bit by bit. Every morning, instead of turning on her phone and immediately facing her worries, she spent a few minutes sitting still. When she went to the hospital, she silently chanted the Buddha's name. Every evening, she recited a short sutra to reflect on herself. She didn't pray for her son to get well quickly, but prayed for herself to have enough calmness and clarity to care for him. She didn't wish for life to become easy, but wished to be less afraid of difficulties. Gradually, she realized her mind was no longer as heavy as before. Her son was still undergoing treatment, debts were still there, but she clearly saw that she was no longer collapsing. Whenever she heard bad news, her mind had a place to hold on to and rise up each time she stumbled. That is the power of compassion, mindfulness, and wisdom. Compassion helps us not to drown in anger. Mindfulness helps us not to be swept away by the past or future. Wisdom helps us clearly see the nature of all problems so as not to cause ourselves suffering. When these three elements combine, we embark on the journey out of suffering. No one can walk that path of transformation for us, but everyone can start with very small things. The Buddha once taught that the mind is like water. When water is stirred, it becomes murky, and we cannot see what is beneath. When water is left still, it naturally clarifies, and we can see to the bottom. The human mind is the same. When caught in anger, worry, fear, we lose the ability to clearly see the truth. But when the mind is allowed to rest, to reflect, and to be nourished by wholesome energies, suffering naturally resolves, not because circumstances change, but because our perception has changed. Many people ask if it is truly possible to escape suffering. The Buddha taught that escaping suffering is not transforming life into a place devoid of difficulties, but not letting those difficulties control our minds. A person who knows how to practice is not one who doesn't encounter sadness, but one who knows how to embrace that sadness with compassion and wisdom, not resisting, not struggling, just looking at it as one looks at a cloud passing across the sky. A person who meditates for a few minutes each morning will find their mind less chaotic. A person who chants Buddha's name regularly will feel peace permeate every breath. A person who recites sutras will know how to reflect on themselves to walk more correctly. A person who does good deeds will feel light and open-hearted. When these small actions are maintained over a long period, they become a solid foundation for the mind to no longer be swept away by impermanence. Human life is as fragile as morning dew. Realizing impermanence is not to fear, but to cherish. Accepting suffering is not to endure passively, but to transform. Buddhist teachings do not promise us a life without storms, but they give us an umbrella to walk in the rain without getting our souls completely wet. Everyone has their own karma, but everyone can start by learning to return to themselves. When the mind is at peace, life is at peace. When the mind is clear, the path naturally opens. So, if you are going through a difficult period, give yourself a chance to pause and listen within. A deep breath is also practice. A chanted Buddha's name is also practice. A kind action is also practice. An understanding look for another is also practice. The Dharma is not far away. The Dharma is right in everything we do every day. Just place your mind correctly, and everything will gradually change for the better. The path to transforming suffering begins with 3 basic elements: compassion, mindfulness, and wisdom. Compassion to love oneself and others. Mindfulness to keep the mind from being swept away. Wisdom to clearly see the nature of suffering without letting it lead one astray. When these 3 elements converge, we can be at peace amidst all the impermanence of life. There are moments in life that make people pause and wonder what truly matters. When seeing someone who was healthy yesterday, now in the emergency room this morning. When hearing that a friend suddenly left this world overnight. When witnessing a close relationship suddenly shatter over a few angry words. When clearly feeling time passing faster than one's own steps. It is in these very moments that we understand impermanence is not a distant philosophical concept, but a truth unfolding daily in life. Many people still live as if life is something neatly held in their hands. They plan, they wish, they set expectations for everything, and believe that if they try long enough, they will grasp it all. But impermanence comes and says that nothing lasts forever. No emotion remains constant. No one stays with us forever. No success is absolutely enduring. Even the body we trust most changes with the years. A truth that seems cruel, yet is the greatest gift life sends us. Because only by seeing impermanence do we know to cherish what we have and know that every moment is a gift that cannot be repeated. In Buddhist teachings, impermanence is placed at the core when speaking of the nature of all phenomena. The Buddha taught that all phenomena in the world are born and die. What is coming will also go. What is strong will gradually weaken. What is joyful will also change to another state. People suffer because they do not accept that change. We hurt because we want to hold on to what life has deemed time to take away. We are tired because we cling to someone who no longer belongs to us. We torment ourselves wanting everything to stand still according to our wishes. But life does not operate according to our will, but according to natural law. Impermanence is not born to make us suffer, but to remind us that attachment only weighs down our hearts. One who understands impermanence does not live passively, but mindfully. Mindfulness here is not a profound state reserved only for long-time practitioners, but the ability to clearly recognize that all experiences are temporary. When happy, know that it is happiness. Cherish it, but do not cling. When sad, know that it is sadness. Accept it, but do not wallow. When successful, thank life, but do not become arrogant. When failed, get up and move on, without unduly blaming oneself. One who sees impermanence knows that nothing is great enough to defeat them, and nothing is stable enough to make them rely on it. Therefore, they live much lighter lives. In the movement of impermanence, a wondrous change occurs in the mind of one who contemplates. They speak less because they understand that many words do not bring much value. Young people often speak a lot to prove themselves, but truly, mature people speak less to listen more. When realizing impermanence, we know that words can become a knife that hurts others. So we choose to speak slowly, thinking carefully before uttering words. We don't want to create karma with unintentional statements. We also don't want to hurt someone just out of a moment of anger. And so, we naturally speak less, argue less, and demand less to win every argument. One who understands impermanence also competes less, because competition is a product of the ego. When we still think we are the center of the universe, we will view every word, action, or glance of others as an evaluation of ourselves. But when we understand that everyone will eventually leave this life, everyone will go through changes. Without desire, the matter of winning and losing becomes too insignificant. We don't want to hurt anyone just to win an argument. We don't want to create distance just to prove we are right. We don't want to live in weariness just to compete over things that bring no peace. Ultimately, winning over others is not as important as winning over our own judgmental mind. One who deeply understands impermanence also knows how to live slowly. Not slow in action, but slow in mind. They don't rush to react to everything, nor do they panic over small incidents. They know to take time to observe emotions before acting. They understand that every day is worth living fully. Therefore, they eat slowly to truly taste the food. They speak slowly so as not to hurt anyone. They walk slowly to observe life. They rest when they feel the need, not forcing themselves to constantly run. This slowness is not sluggishness, but the calmness of one who understands that nothing needs to be rushed, because everyone will eventually reach a point where they must stop. One who deeply understands impermanence knows compassion for others. When one realizes that everyone will experience suffering similar to their own, one no longer blames others for too long. Understanding that everyone is trying their best within their limitations, we become less critical of small mistakes. When we know that everyone has an untold story, we judge less. When we internalize that life is short, we cherish every relationship. And when we see that no one can know what tomorrow will bring, we choose to be kinder to one another. This kindness does not make us lose out. It is what brings us peace when night falls. One who understands impermanence knows how to heal themselves. They know that every wound will eventually close if we don't dig it up daily. They understand that pain is a natural reaction. But suffering comes from us cherishing that emotion for too long. They know to return to their breath to calm their minds. They know to return to chanting Buddha's name to lessen worry, and to doing good deeds to soothe themselves. They don't run from pain, but they also don't let it drown them. They look at it with compassionate eyes and accept that it, too, is part of the journey of growth. I remember once hearing the story of a student who went to study abroad in a foreign country. In the early days, he always carried the pressure to be excellent, to be successful, to prove to his family that he was capable enough. But when faced with loneliness, difficulties, and failures in a foreign land, he gradually realized that life does not always go according to his plans. It was impermanence that taught him how to grow. He learned to be silent when there was no need to speak, learned to smile at unexpected mishaps, learned to let go of heavy expectations, and learned to live kindly with the people he met along the way. He said that it was when he recognized impermanence that he felt he truly began to live, not living to chase some image, but living to understand himself clearly. In the Dhammapada, there's a verse, "Mind is the forerunner of all phenomena. Mind is their master. Mind is their maker. If one speaks or acts with an impure mind, suffering follows. If one speaks or acts with a pure mind, happiness follows." That verse is a reminder that everything we experience originates from the mind. When the mind clings, there is suffering. When the mind lets go, there is lightness. When the mind is attached, life is weary. When the mind understands impermanence, the path of life opens wide. Impermanence takes nothing from us but what we refuse to let go of. The lesson that impermanence brings to those who contemplate is awakening. Awakening to know when to stop when angry. Awakening to not speak words that hurt others. Awakening to keep the mind from falling into the deep pit of comparison. Awakening to understand that the value of life does not lie in how much we achieve, but in how we live with every single thing we have. When living mindfully, we do not waste our youth on meaningless competitions. We do not waste time on things that only cause us more affliction. We do not chase after fleeting things and forget what is truly important. Many people ask how to see impermanence and live peacefully amidst a changing world. In reality, it is not as difficult as we think. We just need to spend a little time each day returning to ourselves. When eating, know that we are eating. When breathing, clearly feel the breath going in and out. When sad, recognize that emotion without judgment. When happy, know to cherish it without clinging. When someone hurts us, remember that they are also enduring their own suffering. So do not rush to blame. When things do not go as desired, think that perhaps life is reminding us of something. Peace is not a destination, but the way we walk. Some people travel very far, but their minds are still full of storms. Some people only walk a few steps, but each step is as light as a cloud. Peace arises from a mind that knows that everything is temporary. When we let go of stubbornness, of unrealistic expectations, and of petty competitions, we will find our hearts more peaceful. That peace no one can give us but ourselves. And it begins the moment we look directly at impermanence, to understand that life is inherently fragile, but not therefore frightening. It is fragile, so we know its brevity. It is short, so we know to cherish. It changes, so we know to grow. If you are tired, allow yourself to slow down. If you are sad, allow your mind to rest. If you are angry, remember that anger only weighs down your heart. If you are stuck, believe that everything will eventually change. Impermanence is not an enemy, but a friend, reminding us to live kinder lives with ourselves and those we love. When you understand that, you will feel yourself taking true steps on the path of life, and each step will carry a taste of peace. There are moments in life when we sit alone in silence, gazing at the sky, changing colors from sunrise to sunset, and we suddenly realize a very simple truth, that for so many years chasing so many things out there, we have forgotten that life is inherently fragile. Everything that is happening is not under our absolute control. What we call success or failure, gain or loss, win or lose, are all just fleeting winds over a long journey that we ourselves are walking. It is this realization that brings our minds into a state of lightness, like someone who has just put down a heavy bag of stones carried for too long. And when we can let go like that, we find ourselves living in the most authentic way. People often say that the journey of spiritual practice is not about trying to become someone very skilled, someone extraordinary, nor is it about searching for some strange light from somewhere to illuminate our lives. Spiritual practice is simply the journey of learning to suffer less. When the mind has fewer afflictions, we also suffer less. When we recognize impermanence, we no longer force life to go our way. When we understand karma, we know to slow down and choose to do good deeds. All of this leads us back to one place: peace. According to the Buddha's teachings, we suffer not because life is too difficult, but because our minds want everything to be as we wish. We want others to love us in the way we need. We want work to go smoothly as we desire. We want life to always be stable as we expect. But then life always changes according to its own laws, exactly as the Buddha taught about impermanence. All conditioned phenomena are impermanent. Anything that arises does so conditionally. And when conditions change, everything else changes too. Those who do not yet understand impermanence will fear this change. Those who have seen impermanence, however, calmly accept it, knowing that this is the inherent nature of life. Humans easily fall into the illusion that simply holding on tightly to everything will prevent life from slipping from their grasp. But if we observe carefully, we will see that the tighter we grasp, the more it hurts. Like a hand trying to hold a handful of sand, the tighter it clenches, and the faster the sand slips away. And in the end, only emptiness remains. The Buddha taught that clinging is the root of suffering. Once we let go of grasping, we will suffer less. A person with wisdom always understands the value of letting go at the right time. Not letting go out of disappointment or indifference, but letting go out of an understanding that everything is constantly changing. If we try to resist that law, we ourselves will be the first to become exhausted. People who have not yet recognized impermanence often spend too much time worrying and feeling troubled. They argue, compete, get angry, and nitpick each other over every word, every action. But when an event occurs, they then realize that the things they were clinging to were not really worth so much attention. A person who has experienced great suffering will deeply understand the Buddha's teaching that human life is merely a breath. If one breathes out and does not breathe in again, all disputes immediately become meaningless. All resentments dissipate like wind, and all rivalries return to dust. It is precisely for this reason that in our most mindful moments, we begin to ask ourselves whether the things we are clinging to are truly important. Many people, after too many stumbles, begin to learn to slow down, no longer chasing things that wear them out, no longer competing for fame and fortune that cause unease, no longer tormenting others just to prove themselves right. The person who has understood impermanence quietly does the best they can. They care for their family with sincerity. They treat friends with generosity. They converse with strangers with kindness. They don't need to show they are good people, but the peace in their eyes speaks for itself. There's a small story about a man who had to go through a crisis to realize he had lived too tensely for many years. Before the crisis, he always lived in a state of competition, constantly trying to outdo others, clinging to every word and every small detail. Until the day he had an accident, lying immobile in the hospital, facing the fear of not knowing if he would wake up tomorrow, he realized that for years he had been chasing things that weren't truly important. The family arguments, the work pressures, the things that had made him tired, now seemed trivial. The only thing he wanted was to return home, see his wife smile, and hear his child call his name. From that moment, he lived differently. He lived slower, more compassionately, and appreciated every present moment. That was the turning point that impermanence taught him. When we see impermanence, we no longer seek happiness from external things. We understand that happiness lies in how we look at life, not in the things we try to acquire. We don't need a perfect life, only a peaceful mind. This peace does not come from money, fame, or external things, but from understanding and knowing contentment. One who understands impermanence also knows how to heal themselves with the smallest things. A morning without rushing, a simple meal with family, an afternoon walk slowly under the gentle sun, a long breath that helps the body relax. These seemingly small things are the most powerful healing remedies. In Buddhist scriptures, it is said that awakening begins with looking deeply into the nature of all phenomena. This does not mean we have to overthink or try to understand with intellect, but to observe the operation of life with our hearts. When we observe long enough, we will see that everything is changing every minute. A leaf green in the morning may be yellow by afternoon. A person by our side today may have embarked on another journey tomorrow. A joy that shines brightly today may fade tomorrow. Seeing that law, we no longer blame life when it doesn't go our way. On the contrary, we are grateful because every moment is a gift. From these profound realizations, the lesson emerges gently. We learn to live slowly so as not to miss important things. We learn to argue less to maintain harmony. We learn to speak less to allow the mind to quiet down. We learn to love others to become a place of peace for them. And above all, we learn to return to ourselves. For there lies the answer we have been searching for all these years. The final healing message I want to send to you, listening here, is the greatest gift of awakening. That is the return to the present moment. You don't need to become a perfect person. You don't need to conquer life. You just need to learn to breathe deeply, smile gently, and realize that you are truly alive. When the mind is at peace, life naturally becomes gentle. When impermanence is known, all suffering naturally dissipates. When the law of cause and effect is understood, we know to sow good deeds, live kindly, and receive peace. Look up at the sky right now and feel your own breath. No rush, no haste. You are simply alive. And that is already a priceless gift. Impermanence does not come to scare you, but to help you look at life with clearer eyes. Happiness does not lie in holding on, but in deep understanding. When you understand impermanence, you no longer try to run away or cling. You just gently walk on your journey with stability and peace. The greatest happiness is a mind at peace in the present. And when you can smile at impermanence itself, it means you have taken a long step on the path back to yourself, back to your